The old rancher's weathered hands trembled as he gripped the fence post, his eyes fixed on the impossible sight before him. A young woman who looked exactly like his daughter Sarah, who had died in a car accident 3 years ago, walking across his property with a man he'd never seen before. Tom Bradley had spent every sunrise for the past 40 years on this Texas ranch, watching the horizon paint itself in shades of amber and gold. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The woman moved with Sarah's graceful stride, her auburn hair catching the morning light just like his daughter's used to. His heart hammered against his ribs as memories flooded back. Sarah's laughter echoing through the barn, her gentle way with the horses, the last argument they'd had before she stormed out that fateful night. The stranger beside her was tall, maybe in his 30s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He held her hand protectively, and Tom noticed how she leaned into him naturally, the way couples do when they've found their safe harbor in each other. The man's clothes suggested he wasn't from around here, pressed khakis and a button-down shirt that had never seen a day of ranch work. Yet there was something genuine about him, something that made Tom's initial suspicion waver. Hey, amazing viewers! If this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, smash that subscribe button right now. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and click the hype button. It's super important because it helps the algorithm share these incredible stories with more people who need to hear them. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think is happening here. Tom's mind raced through possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. Could this be some cruel joke? A case of mistaken identity? He'd heard about people having doppelgangers, but the resemblance was uncanny, down to the small scar above her left eyebrow, from when Sarah had fallen from her bike at age 7. His legs felt weak as he watched them approach the main house where his wife Martha was hanging laundry on the line. Martha's reaction confirmed his fears. The basket of wet clothes tumbled from her hands as she stared, her face draining of color. She stumbled backward against the porch railing, one hand pressed to her heart. Tom could see her lips moving, probably whispering Sarah's name like a prayer. The young woman noticed Martha's distress and quickened her pace. Genuine concern etched across features that were hauntingly familiar. The stranger, the young man, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation immediately. He placed a protective arm around the woman's shoulders and spoke to her in low, urgent tones. Tom was too far away to hear the words, but he could see the confusion and worry spreading across her face. She looked between Martha and the house, then back at her companion, clearly trying to piece together why her presence was causing such a dramatic reaction. Tom forced his legs to move, each step feeling like he was walking through quicksand. As he drew closer, he could hear fragments of conversation. The woman's voice was different from Sarah's, softer, with a slight accent he couldn't quite place. But the cadence, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the unconscious habit of tucking her hair behind her ear, it was all Sarah. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the woman was asking Martha, her voice filled with genuine concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Martha's sob was audible across the yard. "Sarah," she whispered, reaching out with trembling fingers before pulling her hand back. "Oh, my sweet Sarah." The young man stepped forward, his posture protective but not aggressive. "I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion. This is Emma, my fiancée. We're traveling through Texas, and our car broke down about a mile back. We were hoping someone might be able to help us or at least let us use a phone." Emma. The name hit Tom like a physical blow. It wasn't Sarah. Of course it wasn't Sarah. Sarah was gone, buried in the cemetery outside town under a headstone that read, "Beloved Daughter." But the resemblance was so striking that for a moment, just a moment, he had allowed himself to believe in miracles. "I'm Tom Bradley," he managed, his voice rough with emotion. "This is my wife, Martha. I'm sorry for the reaction. You remind us very much of someone we lost." Emma's expression softened with understanding and sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine how difficult this must be." She glanced at her fiancé, then back at Tom and Martha. "Would it help if we left? We don't want to cause you any more pain." But Martha was shaking her head, wiping tears from her cheeks. "No, please, don't go. It's just, the resemblance is remarkable. Our daughter Sarah, she passed away 3 years ago." Car accident. Her voice broke on the last words. The young man, who still hadn't introduced himself, squeezed Emma's hand. "We're very sorry for your loss." Sarah must have been a beautiful person inside and out if she was anything like Emma here. Tom found himself studying the stranger more carefully. There was something about him that seemed familiar, though Tom was certain they'd never met. The man had an honest face, the kind that inspired trust, and the way he looked at Emma spoke of deep, abiding love. It reminded Tom of how he'd looked at Martha when they were young, before life had worn some of the shine off their dreams. "What's your name, son?" Tom asked. "David," the man replied. "David Chen. Emma and I are driving from California to her family reunion in Louisiana. We thought we'd take the scenic route, see some of the country." He smiled ruefully. "Though we didn't plan on the car trouble." Emma nodded, her eyes still concerned as she watched Martha struggle with her emotions. "We've been together for 2 years now. David proposed last month." She held up her left hand, showing a simple but elegant engagement ring. "We're planning a small wedding next spring." The mention of a wedding seemed to hit Martha particularly hard. Tom knew she was thinking about all the milestones Sarah would never reach. Graduation from college, a career, marriage, children. All the dreams that had died with their daughter on that rain-slicked highway. "Let me take a look at your car," Tom offered, needing something practical to focus on. "I'm pretty handy with engines, been fixing farm equipment for decades." David's face lit up with relief. "That would be incredible, thank you. It just started making this grinding noise and then died completely. We managed to coast to the side of the road, but we've been walking for about an hour." As they talked, Tom noticed how Emma kept glancing at Martha with genuine concern. Despite the obvious emotional turmoil her presence was causing, she seemed genuinely worried about a stranger's well-being. It was the kind of compassion Sarah had always shown, the quality that had made her want to become a veterinarian so she could help animals. "Martha, why don't you take Emma inside and get her something cold to drink?" Tom suggested gently. "It's getting hot out here and they've been walking in this heat." Martha nodded, seeming to pull herself together. "Of course. I'm sorry, where are my manners? Please come in. I just made fresh lemonade this morning." Emma looked to David, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead. I'll help Mr. Bradley with the car." As the women headed toward the house, Tom and David walked back toward the road. The silence between them was comfortable rather than awkward, and Tom found himself appreciating the younger man's respectful demeanor. David didn't push for conversation or try to fill the quiet with meaningless chatter. When they reached the disabled vehicle, a modest sedan that had seen better days, David popped the hood and stepped back to let Tom examine the engine. Tom had been working with machinery long enough to diagnose problems quickly, and this one was obvious. "Your alternator's shot," Tom said after a few minutes of poking around. "That's what was making the grinding noise. Once it failed completely, your battery couldn't keep the engine running." David's shoulders sagged. "How expensive is that to fix?" "Well, you'll need a new alternator and labor if you take it to a shop, probably looking at $300–400 minimum." Tom studied the young man's expression and saw the worry there. "Money tight?" David hesitated, then nodded. "We've been saving for the wedding, and this trip was supposed to be our last big expense before we start putting every penny toward the ceremony. Emma's family is, well, they're not wealthy, but this reunion is important to her. Her grandmother is 93, and everyone knows this might be the last time they're all together." Tom felt a familiar tug in his chest, the same protective instinct that had made him want to fix every problem Sarah had ever faced. "Tell you what, I've got a part supplier in town who owes me a favor. Let me make some calls, see what I can do about getting you back on the road." "Mr. Bradley, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering." Tom's tone was firm but kind. "Besides, I could use the distraction. Working with my hands helps me think." They walked back toward the house, where they could hear the soft murmur of women's voices drifting from the kitchen window. Tom wondered what Martha and Emma were talking about, whether Martha was managing to hold herself together, or if she was sharing stories about Sarah. He hoped it was the latter. Martha needed to talk about their daughter more, needed to let the memories breathe instead of keeping them locked away like precious, fragile things. "Can I ask you something?" David said as they approached the porch. "Shoot." The resemblance. It really is that strong. Tom stopped walking and looked at the younger man seriously. "Son, When I first saw Emma walking across my property, for just a moment, I thought I was losing my mind. The way she moves, her profile, even some of her mannerisms, it's like looking at Sarah's ghost. But Emma's her own person, isn't she? I can see that now. David nodded slowly. She is. Emma's got this incredible strength, this way of seeing the good in everything. She grew up in foster care, bounced around between families, but somehow she came out of it with this unshakable faith in people. She makes me want to be better than I am. That's how you know it's real love, Tom said quietly. When someone makes you want to be the best version of yourself. They could hear laughter now from inside the house. Martha's laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine. It was a sound Tom hadn't heard in months, and it made his chest tight with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Sounds like they're getting along, David observed. Martha needs this, Tom admitted. She's been struggling since we lost Sarah. We both have, but Martha took it harder. She blamed herself for the fight they had that night, even though it was just normal mother-daughter stuff. Sarah was 22, trying to assert her independence, and Martha was having trouble letting go. They climbed the porch steps, and Tom paused with his hand on the screen door. Through the mesh, he could see Martha and Emma sitting at the kitchen table, photo albums spread between them. Emma was listening intently as Martha pointed to pictures, and Tom could see tears on his wife's cheeks. But they were different tears now, the kind that came with remembering joy instead of just loss. She's showing her pictures of Sarah, Tom murmured. David nodded, understanding the significance. Emma lost her parents when she was very young. She doesn't have many family photos. She always says she wishes she knew more about where she came from, what her parents were like. Something in David's tone made Tom look at him more closely. There's more to this story, isn't there? About Emma, I mean. David was quiet for a long moment, watching through the screen as Emma gently touched one of the photographs. Emma was adopted as a baby. The records were sealed, and she's never been able to find out much about her birth family. She knows her mother was very young, that there were difficult circumstances. But that's all. A chill ran down Tom's spine, though he couldn't say why. Where was she born? Here in Texas, actually. Small town called Cedar Ridge, about 2 hours south of here. She's always wanted to visit, but we never had the time or money for a detour. David paused. That's actually why we're taking this route to Louisiana instead of the interstate. Emma wanted to drive through Cedar Ridge, maybe see if anything felt familiar. Tom's blood turned to ice. Cedar Ridge. He knew that town, had driven through it countless times over the years. It was where Sarah had been going the night she died, to visit a friend from college. But more than that, it was where Sarah had spent a weekend 23 years ago, when she was 19 and going through what Martha had called her rebellious phase. A weekend Sarah had never talked about. That had changed her somehow. She'd come home different, quieter, more serious, and had thrown herself into her studies with a new intensity. When Tom and Martha had tried to ask about it, she'd brushed off their questions, saying she just needed to focus on her future. 23 years ago. Emma looked to be in her early 20s. Tom's hands began to shake as the impossible possibility took shape in his mind. He thought about the resemblance that went beyond mere physical similarity, about Emma's mannerisms that were so achingly familiar. He thought about Sarah's weekend in Cedar Ridge, about the young woman who had grown up in foster care with no knowledge of her birth family. Tom? David's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? Tom couldn't answer. His mind was reeling, trying to process what this could mean. If Emma was Sarah's daughter, his granddaughter, then Sarah had been pregnant and given birth without ever telling them. She would have been so young, barely more than a child herself. The thought of his daughter going through that alone, making that impossible choice without her family's support, broke his heart all over again. But it would also mean that Sarah lived on, that a part of her had survived in this remarkable young woman who had somehow found her way back to them. Tom forced himself to breathe, to think rationally. Coincidences happened all the time. Just because Emma was born in Cedar Ridge around the right time didn't mean anything definitive. But as he watched her through the screen door, laughing at something Martha was saying, the resemblance seemed to grow stronger rather than weaker. It wasn't just her appearance, it was the way she gestured when she talked. the slight crinkle around her eyes when she smiled, even the way she absently twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she was thinking. "Mr. Bradley?" David's voice was concerned now. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Tom almost laughed at the irony of the phrase. "Maybe I have," he murmured, then louder. "David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." "When exactly was Emma born? Do you know the specific date?" David looked puzzled by the question but answered readily. "March 15th. She just turned 23 last month." "Why?" Tom's knees nearly buckled. March 15th was exactly 9 months after that weekend in Cedar Ridge. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence, too precise to ignore. He gripped the porch railing, his knuckles white with tension. "Tom, what's wrong?" David stepped closer, genuine alarm in his voice. Before Tom could answer, the screen door opened and Emma emerged, her face bright with the kind of joy that comes from unexpected connection. "Mr. Bradley, your wife is amazing. She's been showing me pictures of your daughter and the stories she tells." Sarah sounded like an incredible person. "She was," Tom managed, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite name. Emma's expression grew concerned. "Are you feeling all right? You look pale." Martha appeared in the doorway behind Emma, her face more animated than Tom had seen it in years. "Tom, you should see this. Emma was telling me about her childhood and some of the things she remembers. It's remarkable." "What kind of things?" Tom asked, though he wasn't sure he was ready for the answer. Emma looked slightly embarrassed. "It's probably nothing, just childhood imagination. But I have these fragments of memories, like or maybe they're dreams, about a big house with a wraparound porch, horses in a pasture, the smell of hay and leather. Mrs. Bradley says it sounds just like this place." Martha nodded eagerly. "And she has this birthmark, Tom." "Show him, dear." Emma hesitated, then pulled back her hair to reveal a small, crescent-shaped birthmark behind her left ear. Tom's world tilted on its axis. Sarah had been born with an identical mark in the exact same spot. The doctors had said it was unusual. Most birthmarks faded with age, but Sarah's had remained distinct throughout her life. That's quite a coincidence," Tom said weakly. David was looking between them with growing confusion. "I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm missing something here. The way you're all looking at each other." Tom knew he had to tell them. The truth was too big to keep contained, too important to ignore. "But how did you tell a young woman that she might be the granddaughter you never knew you had? How did you explain to her fiancé that their broken-down car might have led them to the most important discovery of their lives?" "Emma," Tom said carefully, "you said you were adopted as a baby. Do you know anything about the circumstances?" Emma's expression grew guarded. "Not much. The social worker told my first foster family that my birth mother was very young, that she made the difficult decision to give me up because she wanted me to have opportunities she couldn't provide." "Why?" Martha gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Tom, you don't think—" "I don't know what to think," Tom admitted. "But the timing, the birthmark, the resemblance. Emma, do you know if your birth mother's name was Sarah?" Emma's face went white. The records were sealed. I was never able to find out her name." She looked at David, then back at Tom and Martha. "Are you saying you think Sarah might have been my mother?" "It's possible," Tom said gently. "Sarah spent a weekend in Cedar Ridge 23 years ago. She was 19, and when she came back, she was different, more serious, more focused on her future. She never talked about what happened that weekend." David stepped protectively closer to Emma, who looked like she might faint. "This is a lot to process," he said. "Even if it's true, what does it mean?" Martha was crying again, but these were tears of wonder rather than grief. "It would mean Sarah gave us a gift we never knew about. It would mean—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Emma sank down onto the porch steps, her legs apparently unable to support her. "I always wondered why I felt drawn to Texas, why I insisted we take this route. And when our car broke down, I felt like we were supposed to stop here, like something was pulling me toward this place." Tom sat down beside her, careful not to crowd her but wanting to offer comfort. "I know this is overwhelming. Hell, it's overwhelming for us too. But Emma, if you are Sarah's daughter, our granddaughter, then you should know that she was one of the most caring, intelligent, brave people I've ever known. She wanted to be a veterinarian, wanted to help animals. She had this way of seeing the best in everyone, of making people feel valued and heard. That sounds like Emma, David said softly. She volunteers at an animal shelter back home. She's studying to be a veterinary technician. The parallels were too numerous to ignore. Tom felt a strange mixture of grief and joy washing over him. Grief for all the years they'd missed with Emma, all the milestones they hadn't been there to celebrate, but joy at the possibility that Sarah lived on in this remarkable young woman. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice small and uncertain. "We could get a DNA test," Martha suggested. "That would tell us for certain." Emma nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. I've always wondered about my biological family, but I never imagined." She looked up at the house, at the pasture beyond where horses grazed peacefully. "This place does feel familiar. Not like a memory exactly, but like coming home." Tom's heart clenched. "Emma, I want you to know that whatever the test shows, you're welcome here. Both of you. This will always be your home if you want it to be." David squeezed Emma's shoulder. "We should probably call and postpone the reunion. This is more important." "No," Emma said firmly. "We're going to Louisiana. My foster grandmother, the woman who raised me from age 12, she's been looking forward to this for months. But maybe we could come back here afterward? If the test confirms what we all suspect?" "You'd better," Martha said with a watery smile. "I have 23 years of grandmother duties to catch up on." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Tom called his parts supplier and managed to get a new alternator delivered and installed by late afternoon. He refused to let David pay for it, despite the younger man's protests. If Emma was his granddaughter, then David was family too, and family took care of each other. While they waited for the car to be fixed, Emma and Martha continued going through photo albums. Emma asked questions about Sarah's childhood, her dreams, her personality. With each story, the connection between them seemed to grow stronger. Emma learned that Sarah had loved thunderstorms, just like she did. That Sarah had been afraid of spiders, but would carefully capture them and release them outside rather than kill them. That Sarah had a habit of humming while she cooked, the same unconscious melody that Emma caught herself humming. David and Tom worked together to change the oil and check the other fluids in the car. As they worked, David shared stories about Emma, how she'd put herself through school working 3 jobs, how she'd never given up hope of finding her biological family, how she had this incredible ability to make everyone around her feel special and valued. "She's been hurt before," David confided as they checked the tire pressure. "Some of the foster families, they weren't kind, but instead of making her bitter, it made her more compassionate. She has this theory that everyone is fighting battles we can't see, so we should always choose kindness." "Sarah used to say something similar," Tom replied. "She said the world had enough meanness in it, so she was going to add as much kindness as she could." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the 4 of them sat on the porch sharing a simple dinner Martha had prepared. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they'd known each other for years rather than hours. Emma told them about her work at the animal shelter, about the wedding plans she and David were making. David shared stories about his job as a high school teacher, about how he'd fallen in love with Emma's laugh before he'd even seen her face. Tom and Martha talked about the ranch, about their hopes for the future now that they were getting older. For the first time since Sarah's death, Tom found himself thinking about legacy, about what would happen to the land that had been in his family for 4 generations. "I always assumed the ranch would die with us," Tom admitted. "Sarah was our only child, and after well, we never thought there would be anyone to pass it on to." Emma looked out over the pasture, where the horses were silhouetted against the sunset. "It's beautiful here. Peaceful. I can see why someone would want to preserve this. The land has stories," Martha added. "Every fence post, every tree, every building has memories attached to it. It would break my heart to see it sold to developers." As the evening deepened, they made plans for the DNA test. Tom would drive into town the next morning and overnight the samples to a lab that promised results within a week. Emma and David would continue to Louisiana for the reunion, but they exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch regardless of the test results. "I hope you know," Emma said as they prepared to leave, "that meeting you both has been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. Whether or not we're related by blood, I feel a connection to this place, to both of you." Martha hugged her tightly, and Tom saw his wife whisper something in Emma's ear that made the younger woman's eyes fill with tears. David shook Tom's hand firmly, man to man, and Tom saw in his eyes the same protective love he'd once felt for Sarah. As they watched the taillights disappear down the long driveway, Tom and Martha stood together in the gathering darkness, each lost in their own thoughts. "Do you really think she's Sarah's daughter?" Martha asked finally. "In my heart, I know she is," Tom replied. "The question is, what do we do with that knowledge?" "We love her," Martha said simply. "We love her the way we should have been able to love her all along, and we make sure she knows that Sarah would be proud of the woman she's become." Tom nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced since the night they'd gotten the call about Sarah's accident. Maybe this was Sarah's final gift to them, the chance to be grandparents, to have family again, to see her legacy continued in this remarkable young woman who had somehow found her way home. A week later, the phone rang just as Tom was finishing his morning coffee. The caller ID showed the lab's number and his hands shook as he answered. "Mr. Bradley, this is Dr. Martinez from GeneTech Labs. I have the results of your DNA comparison." Tom's heart hammered as he called for Martha to pick up the extension. "Go ahead, doctor. The results are conclusive. There is a 99.97% probability that Emma Chen is your biological granddaughter. Congratulations, Mr. Bradley. You have family." Tom sank into his chair, overwhelmed by a mixture of joy and sorrow so intense it took his breath away. In the background, he could hear Martha sobbing with happiness. "Thank you, doctor," he managed. "Thank you for giving us back our family." After they hung up, Tom immediately called Emma's number. She answered on the second ring, and he could hear the hope and nervousness in her voice. "The test came back," he said without preamble. "Emma, sweetheart, welcome to the family. You're our granddaughter." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that Tom worried the call had been dropped. Then he heard Emma's voice, thick with tears. "Grandpa," she whispered, and Tom felt his heart break and heal at the same time. "When are you coming home?" he asked. "We're leaving Louisiana tomorrow morning," Emma said. "David already called his principal to request extended leave. We want to spend time with you and Grandma, learn about Mom, help with the ranch if you'll let us." "Let you?" Tom laughed through his tears. "Emma, this ranch has been waiting for you your whole life. It's yours as much as it's ours." That night, Tom and Martha sat on their porch watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky. For the first time in 3 years, the future felt full of possibility instead of just an endless stretch of loss. "Sarah knew," Martha said suddenly. "Somehow she knew we'd need Emma, and she made sure Emma would find her way back to us." Tom nodded, thinking about the chain of events that had brought Emma to them. The decision to take the scenic route, the car breaking down at just the right spot, the courage to approach strangers for help. It was too perfect to be mere coincidence. "She's coming home," he said, and the words felt like a prayer of gratitude. In the distance, a nightbird called out across the pasture, and Tom could swear he heard an echo of Sarah's laughter carried on the evening breeze. Their daughter was gone, but her legacy lived on in Emma, in her kindness, her strength, her capacity for love. And now, finally, they had the chance to be the family Sarah had always wanted them to be. Hey, amazing viewers, what an incredible journey this has been. Help me by subscribing to the channel so we can reach 1,000 subscribers, even if you're watching from your TV or computer. Your subscription makes all the difference, and the algorithm will help you see more amazing stories. Leave a like or an emoji in the comments and be part of this growth. Stories like this remind us that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, connection, and the courage to open our hearts to unexpected blessings. Thank you for being part of this community where every story matters and every viewer is family.